Maya always chose the same spot in Mrs. Richardson's classroom, back corner, third row from the window. Not because someone told her to sit there, but because that's where she felt safest. From that desk she could see everything without being seen. She could watch the oak tree outside bend and sway when the wind picked up, and she could disappear into her own world when things got too loud or too overwhelming. 5th grade was supposed to be exciting. That's what everyone said. You're almost in middle school now. You're one of the big kids. But for Maya, it felt pretty much the same as 4th grade and 3rd grade and all the grades before that. She came to school, did her work, went home. The difference was that now, everyone else seemed to have figured out something she hadn't. They knew how to laugh at the right moments, how to pass notes without getting caught, how to form these tight little groups that moved through the hallways like they'd been friends forever. Maya had friends once. Back in 2nd grade, she and a girl named Lily used to play together every day at recess. They'd make up stories about magical kingdoms and draw pictures in the dirt with sticks. But then Lily moved away during winter break, and Maya never quite figured out how to start over with someone new. By 3rd grade, the groups had already formed. Everyone had their person, their crew, their lunch table. And Maya? She had her sketchbook. That sketchbook went everywhere with her. It was black with a worn spine, stuffed so full of drawings that some pages crinkled at the edges. Inside were hundreds of sketches. Birds mostly. Cardinals and blue jays and little sparrows. Sometimes she drew flowers or trees or the view from her bedroom window. Her mom always said she had a gift, that her drawings looked so real you could almost hear the birds singing. But Maya never showed them to anyone at school. What if people thought they were stupid? What if they laughed? It was safer to keep them hidden, tucked away in her desk or her backpack where no one would accidentally see. Mrs. Richardson was nice enough. She was the kind of teacher who wore colorful scarves and always had a bowl of peppermints on her desk. She smiled at Maya when she turned in assignments and wrote encouraging comments on her papers. Great work. An excellent effort. But she never pushed. Never asked Maya why she ate lunch in the library 3 days a week or why she never raised her hand even when it was obvious she knew the answer. Maya figured her teacher probably thought she was just shy, one of those quiet kids who preferred being alone. And maybe that was easier than explaining the truth, which was that Maya wasn't sure how to be anything else. Lunchtime was the hardest part of the day. The cafeteria was loud and chaotic, full of scraping chairs and shouting voices and the smell of pizza and chicken nuggets. Maya would grab her lunch tray and scan the room, looking for a spot that wouldn't be too obvious. Sometimes she'd sit at the end of a table where a group of girls were already deep in conversation, hoping she'd blend into the background. Other times she'd eat quickly and ask the lunch monitor if she could go to the library early. The librarian, Ms. Chen, never asked questions. She'd just nod and let Maya find a quiet corner where she could pull out a book and pretend to read until the next period started. The thing about being invisible is that after a while you get used to it. You stop expecting people to save you a seat or ask about your weekend. You stop hoping someone might notice your new shoes or comment on the drawing you accidentally left on your desk. Maya had gotten so good at being invisible that sometimes she wondered if she was doing it on purpose, building walls around herself so high that no one could climb over them even if they wanted to. But here's what no one tells you about being the quiet kid. You notice everything. While everyone else is busy talking and laughing and living their lives out loud, you're watching. You see the boy who always sits alone at recess because the other kids think he's weird. You notice when someone's eyes get red during class because they're trying not to cry. You hear the small kindnesses and the casual cruelties that everyone else misses because they're too busy being the main character in their own story. Maya saw all of it. She watched the way groups would shift and change, how best friends one week would barely speak the next. She noticed who got picked first for teams in gym class and who got picked last. She saw the kids who brought fancy lunches from home and the ones who always got the free meal from the cafeteria. And she noticed more than anything how everyone seemed to fit somewhere except her. Her desk near the window became her refuge. During independent work time, she'd finish her assignments quickly and then pull out her sketchbook, keeping it low and hidden behind her textbook. She'd sketch the oak tree, adding detail to every branch and leaf, losing herself in the quiet rhythm of pencil on paper. Sometimes she'd draw birds landing on the branches, though she'd never actually seen birds there. It just felt right, imagining them finding a safe place to rest. Mrs. Richardson kept the classroom cheerful. There were motivational posters on the walls with, Messages like "Be kind and you are capable of amazing things." There was a reading corner with beanbags and a bookshelf full of stories about kids who overcame obstacles and made friends and discovered they were brave all along. Maya had read most of them. She knew how these stories were supposed to go, but real life didn't work like books. In real life, you couldn't just decide to be brave and have everything magically fall into place. The other kids in class weren't mean to Maya. That's important to understand. They didn't tease her or call her names or do any of the things that would make a teacher step in. They just didn't see her. She existed in their peripheral vision, someone who was always there but never really present. If you'd asked any of them about Maya, they probably would have said she was nice or quiet or fine. They wouldn't have been able to tell you what she was good at or what she cared about or that she spent most of her free time drawing birds that looked so real they might fly right off the page, and Maya had convinced herself that this was okay, that maybe some people were meant to be in the background, that maybe her role was to observe rather than participate. She told herself these things so many times that she almost believed them. But deep down, in a place she didn't like to examine too closely, there was a small ache, a longing for something she couldn't quite name, a wish that someone might look past the quiet exterior and see her for who she really was. She didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. Sometimes the smallest moments create the biggest shifts. Sometimes being invisible is just preparation for the moment when someone finally sees you. And sometimes the quiet kid in the back of the classroom is exactly the person everyone needs, even if nobody realizes it yet. It happened on a Tuesday morning, right after the morning announcements crackled through the speaker above the whiteboard. Mrs. Richardson stood at the front of the classroom, with the kind of smile that meant she was excited about something. She clasped her hands together and waited for everyone to settle down, which took longer than usual because Tuesdays always felt slow and unfocused. "Class, I have something special to share with you," she said, and immediately the room buzzed with interest. Special announcements could mean anything: a field trip, a party, maybe even a free day. As you know, the spring showcase is coming up in a few weeks. Every grade performs or presents something for parents and the whole school community. A few kids groaned. The spring showcase was a big deal, but it also meant extra work and practice. Last year they'd done a play about recycling that nobody really enjoyed. This year, Mrs. Richardson continued, we're doing something different. Instead of a performance, our class is going to create a collaborative art installation. We're going to paint a mural, a huge one, that shows our community. Every single one of you will contribute a section. The groans turned into excited chatter. Painting sounded way better than memorizing lines or singing songs. Mrs. Richardson pulled down a large sheet of paper that she'd taped to the whiteboard, revealing a sketch of how the mural would be divided into sections. There were roughly 30 squares and rectangles, all different sizes, fitting together like a puzzle. You'll each get a section, she explained. You can paint anything that represents our community. Buildings, people, nature, activities. Anything that makes our town special. And the best part is you can work together in groups if you want. This is about collaboration and creativity. The classroom exploded. Kids immediately turned to their friends, already planning what they'd paint and who they'd work with. We should do the park, someone shouted. Let's paint the library, someone else called out. Within seconds, groups were forming. Best friends grabbed each other's arms. Kids who sat near each other started comparing ideas. The noise level rose until Mrs. Richardson had to clap her hands to get everyone's attention again. Maya sat very still at her desk, watching it all happen. Her stomach felt tight and uncomfortable. Group projects were always like this. Everyone paired up so quickly, so naturally, like they'd rehearsed it beforehand. And Maya would be left waiting, hoping the teacher would just assign her something so she wouldn't have to experience the awkwardness of trying to join a group that didn't want her. Mrs. Richardson started walking around with a clipboard, writing down who wanted to work together and which section they'd take. The mural was going to be painted on a massive canvas that the art teacher had helped set up in the back of the classroom. It stretched almost the entire length of the back wall. Maya glanced at it and felt even smaller than usual. Let's do the playground, two girls near the front decided, high-fiving each other. We can paint the swings and the slide. I want to paint the ice cream shop on Main Street, a boy announced. Who wants to help me? 3 hands shot up immediately. Maya opened her sketchbook, pretending to be busy with something important. She traced over a bird she'd drawn last week, pressing her pencil harder than necessary. Maybe if she looked occupied, no one would notice that she wasn't participating in the chaos around her. Maya, Mrs. Richardson appeared beside her desk, clipboard in hand. Have you thought about what you'd like to paint? Maya's throat felt tight. Not really, she said quietly. That's okay. How about this corner section here? Mrs. Richardson pointed to a spot on the diagram, a rectangular space in the lower right. It's a nice size. Not too big, not too small. Would you like to work alone or with a partner? The question hung in the air. Maya knew what she was supposed to say. She was supposed to say she wanted a partner. And then Mrs. Richardson would find someone who didn't have a full group yet and assign them together. But Maya had done that before and it never went well. The other person would do most of the talking and planning, and Maya would just go along with it, feeling like an extra piece that didn't quite fit. Alone is fine, Maya said. Mrs. Richardson nodded, wrote something on her clipboard, and moved on to the next cluster of students. By the end of the morning, everyone had their assignments. The mural plan was complete. Groups of 2 and 3 had claimed most of the sections. A few students like Maya were working solo, but they seemed happy about it, confident in their ability to create something on their own. Maya just felt hollow. The actual painting started the next day during art period. Mrs. Richardson and the art teacher, Mr. Lopez, helped set up the canvas and distributed supplies. There were cups of paint in every color imaginable, brushes of different sizes, palettes for mixing, and old shirts to use as smocks. The classroom transformed into a studio, and the energy was electric. Kids dove into their sections with enthusiasm. The girls painting the playground sketched out swings in pencil first, debating whether to add clouds in the background. The boy working on the ice cream shop mixed pink and white paint to get the perfect strawberry shade. Groups huddled together, sharing ideas and supplies, laughing when someone accidentally dripped paint on the floor. Maya stood in front of her section with a pencil in her hand. It was blank. Completely blank. She'd thought about what to draw the night before, lying in bed and staring at the ceiling. Maybe a garden or a tree, something simple and safe. But now, standing here with everyone else working around her, her mind went empty. She sketched a basic tree trunk, then a few branches. It was fine. Boring, but fine. Nothing like the detailed drawings she made in her sketchbook. But those were private. Those were just for her. The days passed and the mural began to take shape. It was actually impressive. The ice cream shop had colorful details with tiny sprinkles on the cones. The playground looked inviting with kids painted mid-swing. Someone had painted the town library with remarkable accuracy, including the stone steps out front. The sections were starting to connect, forming a cohesive picture of their community. And then there was Maya's section. A simple tree. Brown trunk. Green leaves. It looked like something a second grader might paint. She knew it did. But every time she tried to add more detail, she froze. What if she messed it up? What if people saw how much effort she was putting in and still thought it looked bad? It was safer to keep it simple. On the third day of painting, something happened that made everything worse. Maya was at the sink in the back of the classroom, rinsing her brush. The water ran murky brown as she swished the bristles under the tap. She wasn't paying attention to the 2 girls standing nearby, also cleaning their brushes until she heard her name. "Did you see Maya's part?" one of them said, not exactly whispering but not speaking loudly either. Just a casual observation between friends. Maya froze. The water kept running. "I know, right?" the other girl replied. "It's so plain. Just a boring tree. She never talks to anyone anyway. I don't think she even cares about the project." They weren't trying to be cruel. Maya understood that somehow, even through the sting of their words. They were just making an observation, the way people do when they don't realize the person they're talking about is standing 3 feet away. But it hurt anyway. It hurt more than Maya expected. She turned off the water slowly, keeping her face neutral. She walked back to her desk, set down her brush, and sat very still. The classroom noise continued around her, but it sounded muffled and distant, like she was underwater. That afternoon, during silent reading time, Maya asked for the bathroom pass. Mrs. Richardson nodded without looking up from the papers she was grading. Maya walked down the empty hallway, her footsteps echoing against the tile. She pushed open the bathroom door and went into the farthest stall, the one at the end that nobody ever used because the lock was finicky. She sat on the closed toilet seat and let herself cry. Not loud, dramatic sobs, just quiet tears that slipped down her cheeks and dripped onto her jeans, leaving dark spots on the denim. She cried because she'd been trying so hard to be invisible, and somehow that had made her even more visible in all the wrong ways. She cried because she wanted to be the kind of person who could paint something amazing and work in a group and make people laugh. She cried because she was tired of being on the outside looking in. After a few minutes, she wiped her face with toilet paper and took deep breaths until the tightness in her chest loosened. She couldn't stay in here forever. Someone would notice eventually, and that would be even more embarrassing than anything else. When she came back to class, nobody looked up. Nobody asked if she was okay. The world had kept turning without her, just like it always did. That night, Maya lay in bed with her sketchbook open on her lap. She flipped through pages of detailed drawings, each one better than the last. Birds in flight with feathers so carefully rendered you could count them. Flowers with delicate petals and shadows that made them look three-dimensional. A portrait of her cat with every whisker perfectly placed. She was good at this. She knew she was. But being good at something didn't matter if you were too afraid to show anyone. And right now, Maya couldn't imagine a scenario where showing her real talent wouldn't end in disappointment or judgment, or more proof that she didn't fit in. She closed the sketchbook and turned off her light. Tomorrow, she'd go back to school and add a few more leaves to her boring tree. She'd keep her head down and finish the project and get through the spring showcase, and then life would go back to normal, whatever normal meant. But sometimes life has other plans. Sometimes the universe is just waiting for the right moment to shift everything, and sometimes that moment comes from the last person you'd ever expect. The next morning started like any other. Maya arrived at school early because her mom had an appointment and needed to drop her off before the buses came. The classroom was empty except for Mrs. Richardson, who was writing the day's schedule on the whiteboard. Maya mumbled a good morning and went to her desk, pulling out a book to read until everyone else arrived. She was deep into a chapter about a girl exploring a cave when she heard the classroom door open. Footsteps approached, but Maya kept her eyes on her book. It was probably just another early arrival. "Hey, Maya." She looked up. It was Daniel, one of the boys who usually led the kickball games at recess. He was popular in that easy, effortless way that some kids are. Everyone liked him. He was funny and good at sports and always seemed confident. Maya had probably spoken to him twice in the entire school year, and both times it had been him asking to borrow a pencil. Hi," Maya said, surprised. She glanced around, wondering if maybe he was talking to someone else, but they were the only two students in the room besides Mrs. Richardson. Daniel shifted his backpack on his shoulder. He looked different somehow. Tired, maybe. His eyes were a little red, and he kept glancing back at the door like he was making sure no one else had come in yet. "I know this is weird," he started, then stopped. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully. "I saw your drawings. The ones you do sometimes when you think nobody's looking." Maya's heart jumped. She thought she'd been so careful, always keeping her sketchbook angled away, always tucking it into her desk when people walked by. "They're really good," Daniel continued quickly. "Like really good. The birds and stuff, they look so real." Maya didn't know what to say. Was this a joke? Was someone going to jump out and laugh at her? "My grandma died last weekend," Daniel said suddenly, and his voice cracked on the word died. He cleared his throat, looking embarrassed. "She had a heart attack. It was really fast. We didn't even get to say goodbye properly." "I'm sorry," Maya said softly. She meant it. She didn't know what else to say, but those words felt important. Daniel nodded. He blinked a few times, and Maya realized he was trying not to cry. She really loved cardinals. Like she was obsessed with them. She had cardinal decorations all over her house, and she'd always get so excited when one showed up in her backyard. She'd call me over to the window and we'd just watch it together. Maya stayed quiet, sensing that Daniel needed to talk. "I'm painting the park for my section of the mural," he continued, "and I thought maybe I could add a cardinal somewhere. Like a tribute to her. But I can't draw at all. I tried last night at home and it looked like a blob with a beak." He attempted a laugh, but it came out shaky. "So I was wondering if maybe you could help me. Add a cardinal to my section. I'd really appreciate it." This was the last thing Maya had expected when she woke up that morning. Daniel asking for her help. Talking to her about his grandma. Being vulnerable in a way that boys like him usually weren't. "Okay," Maya said. "I can do that." Relief flooded Daniel's face. "Really? Thank you so much. I'll show you where when we work on it today." More students started trickling in and Daniel went to his desk, but he gave Maya a small wave as he sat down. She waved back, still processing what had just happened. During art period that afternoon, Daniel came over to Maya's corner with his palette and brushes. His section was already taking shape. He'd painted grass and trees and a bench. It actually looked pretty good for someone who claimed he couldn't draw. Maybe right here, he suggested, pointing to a branch on one of his trees. Like it's just sitting there, you know, watching over everything. Maya studied the space. She could picture it perfectly. She pulled out her pencil and began sketching lightly on his section, feeling the familiar calm that came whenever she drew. The cardinal took shape under her hand. She added detail to the feathers, giving them texture and depth. She sketched the distinctive crest on its head and the black mask around its beak. Whoa, Daniel breathed, watching over her shoulder. That's exactly what I was picturing. That's perfect. Other students had started to notice. A girl named Priya wandered over from her section nearby. What's Maya doing? She's helping me add a cardinal, Daniel explained. For my grandma. Priya leaned in to look. Oh my gosh, Maya, that's beautiful. Can you draw? Maya felt her cheeks flush. I guess. Kind of. Daniel laughed. She's amazing. Look at this. By now a small crowd had gathered. Kids were abandoning their own sections to come see what was happening in Daniel's. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she picked up a red paint and began filling in the cardinal's body. She was acutely aware of all the eyes watching her, but she forced herself to focus on the bird. Just the bird. Nothing else. She worked carefully, mixing different shades of red to create dimension. The cardinal began to look three-dimensional, like it might fly right off the canvas. She added a touch of black around the beak and face, then white highlights to make the feathers shine. That looks so real, someone whispered. When Maya finished, she stepped back. The cardinal sat on Daniel's painted branch, vibrant and alive, a small splash of beauty in the park scene. It's perfect, Daniel said, and his voice was thick with emotion. My grandma would have loved it. Thank you, Maya, seriously. You're welcome, Maya said quietly. Priya touched Maya's arm. Could you help me with something too? I painted these flowers, but they look kind of flat. Could you maybe add some details? Make them look more real like that bird? Before Maya could answer, another student chimed in. Oh, could you help with mine too? I'm doing the baseball field and I want to add some birds flying in the sky. I need help with my trees, someone else added. They look like green blobs. Mrs. Richardson had been watching from her desk. She stood up and walked over, and Maya tensed, worried she was about to get in trouble for leaving her own section. But Mrs. Richardson was smiling. Maya, it seems you have quite a talent, she said warmly. Would you be comfortable helping your classmates? You'd be like our class artist consultant. Maya looked around at the faces watching her. They weren't mocking or judging. They looked genuinely interested. Impressed even. It was the strangest feeling. Like she'd been speaking a foreign language her whole life and suddenly discovered that everyone around her spoke it too. They'd just never known she could. Okay, Maya said. I can help. The rest of art period transformed into something Maya had never experienced before. She moved from section to section, adding small details that elevated each piece. She showed Priya how to add shadows to her flowers to make them three-dimensional. She sketched birds in flight for the baseball field, each one in a slightly different position so they looked natural. She added texture to someone's brick building and depth to another person's pond, and people talked to her. Actually talked to her. They asked questions about techniques and thanked her enthusiastically when she finished helping them. Daniel high-fived her when the period ended. Priya asked if she wanted to sit together at lunch. Someone had asked her to sit with them at lunch. Maya walked to the cafeteria in a daze. She grabbed her usual tray, but instead of scanning for an empty spot at the end of a table, she followed Priya to where she and 3 other girls sat. They made room for her immediately, scooting their trays over without being asked. So how long have you been drawing? One of the girls asked. Since I was really little, I guess, Maya said. My mom says I was always doodling on everything. You should show us your sketchbook sometime, Priya said. Daniel said you have like a whole book of amazing drawings. Maya's first instinct was to say no to protect that private space. But looking around at these faces, genuinely interested and kind, something shifted inside her. Maybe it was okay to be seen. Maybe sharing the things you loved didn't make you vulnerable. Maybe it made you human. Maybe, Maya said, and she smiled. The conversation flowed naturally after that. They talked about the mural and TV shows and weekend plans. Maya mostly listened, but sometimes she added comments and nobody seemed to think it was weird that she was quiet. They just included her, like she'd always been part of the group. At recess, Daniel saved her a spot on the bench near the kickball field. "Thanks again for the cardinal," he said. "I told my mom about it last night and she cried. In a good way, I mean. She said Grandma would have thought it was beautiful." "I'm glad I could help," Maya said, and she realized she really meant it. Helping someone else, using her talent for something that mattered to another person, felt better than anything she'd experienced in a long time. Over the next few days, something remarkable happened. Maya's corner section, the one with the boring tree, started to change. During art period, she'd help other students with their sections, and then she'd return to her own. She began adding details she'd been too afraid to include before. She painted birds landing on the branches. She added flowers at the base of the tree. She mixed colors to create shadows and highlights that made the tree look like it was actually growing out of the canvas. And people noticed. They'd stop by her section and compliment her work. They'd ask her opinion on their own paintings. Mrs. Richardson pulled her aside one afternoon and said, "I'm so glad you're sharing your gift with us, Maya. You're making this mural something really special." But the most unexpected part wasn't the compliments or even the new friends. It was the way Maya felt different. Lighter somehow. Like she'd been carrying around a heavy backpack for years and someone had finally helped her take it off. She still wasn't the loudest person in the room. She still preferred listening to talking most of the time. But she discovered that quiet didn't have to mean invisible, and sharing your talents didn't make you vulnerable. It made you valuable. The girl who'd sat alone in the back corner was still there, still herself. But now she was seen. And being seen, Maya was starting to learn, wasn't something to fear. It was something to embrace. The mural became something nobody expected. What started as a class assignment turned into something alive, something that seemed to breathe with personality and heart. And at the center of it all, weaving everything together, was Maya. She didn't plan it that way. It happened organically, naturally, the way the best things usually do. As Maya moved from section to section, helping her classmates add details and depth to their work, something interesting emerged. She started noticing connections between the different pieces. Daniel's park was right next to someone's neighborhood section. The baseball field bordered the school building. The town library faced the ice cream shop across a painted street. One afternoon, as Maya finished helping a boy add shading to his painting of the fire station, she had an idea. "What if we connected everything?" she said quietly, almost to herself. "What do you mean?" the boy asked. "Like, what if we added things that flow from one section to another? So it's not just a bunch of separate paintings, but one big picture?" The boy's eyes lit up. "That's a great idea." "Like what?" Maya pointed to the space between his fire station and the adjacent section, which showed a row of shops on Main Street. "We could add a road here. Make it look like everything is in the same town, not just random pieces." Word spread quickly. Soon kids were volunteering their sections to be connected. Maya sketched vines that grew from her tree and stretched into neighboring spaces. She added birds that started in one section and flew into another. She painted sidewalks that wound between different areas and clouds that drifted across multiple squares. Mrs. Richardson watched it all unfold with growing amazement. During a quiet moment while kids were washing brushes, she pulled Maya aside. "What you're doing, bringing everyone's work together like this, it's remarkable. You have a real gift for seeing the bigger picture." Maya felt pride bloom in her chest. Not the nervous, worried kind of attention she used to fear, but something warm and earned. She'd found her place in this project, and it felt right. The classroom dynamic shifted in those weeks. Kids who'd never spoken to Maya before started greeting her in the hallways. At lunch, she rotated between different groups, and nobody seemed to mind. She sat with Priya and her friends on Mondays. Daniel's kickball crew invited her to join them on Tuesdays. By Friday, she had enough options that she sometimes just sat wherever had an open seat, confident that she'd be welcomed. Her mom noticed the change too. "You seem happier lately," she said one evening while they were making dinner together. "Something good happening at school?" Maya told her about the mural, about helping Daniel with the cardinal, about how people had started really seeing her artwork. Her mom listened with tears in her eyes, then pulled Maya into a hug. "I always knew you were special," her mom said. "I'm so glad everyone else is finally seeing it too." As the weeks progressed, the mural transformed into something extraordinary. The connecting elements Maya had added made it feel cohesive and intentional. Her tree, once boring and simple, had become the anchor point. Its branches reached across multiple sections, creating a canopy that unified the entire piece. Birds she'd painted seemed to travel through the whole community, appearing in different sections like they were flying from one part of town to another. The detail work was impressive, too. Every flower had individual petals. Every brick building showed texture and depth. The people Maya had added, walking along the connected sidewalks and sitting in the park, looked like they might start moving at any moment. The mural told a story about a community that was diverse but connected, separate but unified. One afternoon, Mr. Lopez, the art teacher, brought the principal, Ms. Washington, to see the mural. Maya was working on adding final touches to a garden section when she heard Ms. Washington gasp. "This is incredible," the principal said, walking slowly along the canvas, taking in every detail. "Mrs. Richardson, this is truly exceptional work." "The credit goes to the students," Mrs. Richardson said, but she caught Maya's eye and smiled. "Especially Maya. She's been the glue that's held everything together." Ms. Washington approached Maya. "Did you do all of this?" "No," Maya said quickly. "Everyone painted their own sections. I just helped connect things and added some details." "Don't let her be modest," Daniel called out from across the room. "Maya made all of our stuff look professional. She's the reason this mural is actually good instead of just okay." Several other students chimed in with agreement. Maya felt her face flush, but it wasn't the embarrassed heat she used to feel. It was something different: appreciation, recognition, belonging. The spring showcase arrived faster than anyone expected. The mural was finished, and Mrs. Richardson had arranged for it to be mounted on a large wooden frame that stood in the hallway outside their classroom. The night of the showcase, the halls filled with parents, younger siblings, grandparents, and community members, all wandering from classroom to see what each grade had created. Maya's mom arrived early, wearing her favorite dress and carrying her camera. "I can't wait to see it," she said, squeezing Maya's hand. When they walked up to the mural, her mom stopped and stared. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then she turned to Maya with tears streaming down her face. "Baby, this is beautiful." "You did this?" "We all did it," Maya said. "But yeah, I helped." "Helped?" Daniel appeared beside them with his parents. "Mrs. Anderson, Maya basically turned all of us into artists. My section looked like a kindergartner painted it until she fixed it." "Fixed is a strong word," Maya said, laughing. "I just added a few things." Daniel's mom stepped forward. "You added the cardinal, didn't you? Daniel told us about it. About your grandma and everything." She said that last part to Daniel. Daniel's mom nodded, her eyes welling up. "Thank you. It's perfect." She would have absolutely loved it. Throughout the evening, parent after parent stopped to admire the mural. They pointed out details and marveled at how everything connected. Maya overheard one dad say, "This is better than some art I've seen in museums." A grandmother called it a masterpiece. But the moment that meant the most came near the end of the night. Priya brought her parents over to meet Maya. "This is my new friend," Priya said. "She's the most talented artist in our whole school." Priya's dad shook Maya's hand seriously, like she was an adult. "Your work is exceptional. Have you thought about art school?" Maya blinked. "I'm only in 5th grade, he laughed. "Well, when you're older, you have real talent." As people began filtering out, Ms. Washington made an announcement that the mural would hang in the main hallway for the rest of the year, and possibly permanently if the school board approved. The class cheered. Mrs. Richardson gathered everyone together for a group photo in front of the mural. As the photographer counted down, Daniel threw his arm around Maya's shoulder. Priya squeezed her hand on the other side. When the flash went off, Maya was genuinely smiling, surrounded by people who'd become more than just classmates. They'd become friends. After the showcase ended and most families had left, Maya stood alone in front of the mural for a few minutes. She traced the path of one of her painted birds as it flew from her tree section through Daniel's park, over Priya's flowers, and into the sky above the school building someone had painted. Pretty amazing, huh? Mrs. Richardson appeared beside her. "Yeah," Maya agreed softly. "You know what I realized?" her teacher said. "This whole project worked because you helped everyone see how their individual pieces fit into something bigger. You didn't take over or do it all yourself. You helped each person make their own work better. And then you connected it all. That's a rare gift, Maya. Maya thought about that. She'd spent so long trying to be invisible, thinking her quiet nature was a flaw, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe being the person who watched, who noticed details, who saw how things fit together, maybe that was its own kind of strength. I'm glad I could help, Maya said. Walking to the car with her mom that night, Maya felt different. Not completely transformed, not suddenly extroverted and loud. She was still herself. Still the quiet girl who loved drawing birds and preferred observing to performing. But she'd learned something important. She'd learned that there was power in gentleness, value in patience, and that the quietest person in the room might be the one holding everything together. The mural would hang in that hallway for years, long after Maya and her classmates graduated and moved on to middle school and high school and beyond. New students would walk past it and wonder about the 5th grade class that created something so beautiful. They'd see the connected sections, the unified vision, the way individual pieces became something greater when woven together. And though they wouldn't know her name, Maya's spirit would remain in every brushstroke, in every bird in flight, in every vine connecting one section to another, the quiet girl who brought the class together, one small detail at a time. The girl who discovered that sometimes the most powerful way to be seen is simply to help others shine. And in helping them shine, she'd found her own light. Not a spotlight, bright and overwhelming, but something gentler, a steady glow that said, I'm here, I matter, I belong. And that, Maya realized as her mom started the car and they drove home through the quiet streets of their town, was more than enough. The mural hung in the hallway outside Mrs. Richardson's classroom for the rest of the school year, and Maya passed it at least 4 times every day. Each time she walked by, she saw something different. Not because the painting had changed, but because she had. Sometimes she'd catch younger students standing in front of it, pointing at details and making up stories. Once she saw a kindergartner reach out to touch one of her birds, then pull his hand back quickly when his teacher reminded him not to. The janitor, Mr. Williams, told Maya one afternoon that it was his favorite thing in the whole building. Makes me feel hopeful, he'd said simply. Reminds me that good things happen when people work together. The months following the spring showcase brought changes Maya was still adjusting to. She wasn't invisible anymore. People said hi in the hallways. Kids invited her to birthday parties. Teachers called on her even when she didn't raise her hand. At first, the attention felt overwhelming. Maya still had days where she needed quiet, where she'd slip away to the library during lunch to recharge. But the difference now was that it was a choice, not a necessity born from loneliness. Priya understood. That makes sense, she said when Maya mentioned needing breaks. Just let me know when you want company and when you need space. It was such a simple thing, being understood without judgment. But for Maya, it meant everything. Her sketchbook, once a private refuge, became something she shared more freely. She showed Priya her bird drawings, and Priya asked if Maya could draw a portrait for her mom's birthday. When Priya saw the finished portrait, she cried happy tears. This is the best gift ever. You're so talented. Mrs. Richardson started displaying Maya's artwork on a bulletin board, rotating new pieces every few weeks. The art teacher, Mr. Lopez, asked if she'd be interested in entering a regional student art competition. I don't know, Maya said uncertainly. That seems like a big deal. It is a big deal, Mr. Lopez agreed. But your work deserves to be seen. Just think about it. Maya did think about it. The old Maya would have said no immediately, too afraid of failure. But the new Maya, the one who'd helped create a mural people stopped to admire every day, she was considering it. That night, Maya filled out the competition application and chose 3 pieces from her sketchbook. She sealed them in an envelope before she could change her mind. As spring turned to early summer and 5th grade wound down, Maya found herself reflecting on everything that had changed. The mural project had been the catalyst, but the real transformation had been internal. She'd learned that her quiet nature wasn't something to fix or hide, but a part of who she was that held value. On one of the last days of school, Daniel's mom stopped at the mural and motioned for Maya to come over. I wanted to thank you again, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Daniel's been struggling since his grandmother passed. But he talks about this cardinal. About how it makes him feel like she's still watching over him. What you created here helped my son heal. I'll never forget that. After she left, Maya stood alone in the hallway, staring at the cardinal she'd painted all those weeks ago. She'd drawn it as a favor, trying to help someone who'd noticed her when no one else did. She hadn't known then how much that simple act would ripple outward. The last day of school was bittersweet. Students signed yearbooks and promised to stay in touch. Maya found herself surrounded by classmates she'd barely known at the beginning of the year, all wanting to exchange contact information and make summer plans. As the final bell rang, Maya walked past the mural one more time. She placed her hand gently on her tree section, feeling the texture of dried paint. This piece of art would outlast this school year. Maybe some other quiet kid would see it and realize that their difference could be their strength. Outside, her mom asked, "How are you feeling?" Maya thought about it. Sad that 5th grade was over. Excited for summer. Grateful for friends. Proud of herself, hopeful. "Good," she finally said. "I feel really good." That summer, Maya won 2nd place in the art competition for her cardinal drawing. When her mom read the letter out loud, they both cried and laughed in the kitchen. But the win wasn't the most important thing that happened that year. The real victory had been much quieter, much more personal. It was the moment Maya realized she didn't need to be loud to be seen. She didn't need to change who she was to matter. Years later, Maya would sometimes think back to the mural. She'd remember adding connection points between separate sections, weaving individual pieces into a unified whole. Life was a lot like that mural. Everyone had their own story to tell, but the beautiful part was how those stories intersected. Maya had learned that lesson at 10 years old. She'd learned that being different wasn't something to hide, that quiet strength was still strength, that the kids who watched from the corners often saw things others missed. The world needed quiet people, she came to believe. It needed observers and listeners who noticed when others were hurting. It needed people who understood that you didn't have to be the loudest voice to make the biggest impact. Maya's story isn't about a shy girl who became outgoing. It's about a girl who learned that she didn't need to transform at all. She just needed to trust that who she already was, quiet and all, was exactly who the world needed. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply show up as yourself. Use your gifts even when they seem small. Build bridges between people. Notice the ones who aren't being noticed. That's what Maya did. That's what any of us can do. The quiet student who brought the class together taught everyone something important. Community isn't built by the loudest voices. It's built by the ones who notice what's missing and have the courage to fill the gaps. By the ones who see potential in others and help them see it in themselves. And that lesson, painted in birds and trees and carefully drawn connections, would last far longer than any single school year. It would last a lifetime.